I'm going to do something I rarely do and tell you some very intimate things about my life that I've never discussed publicly. Get ready for an earful, and hopefully, you'll still be subscribed to my channel after what you're about to hear.
Do you want the latest information for Philippine expats and expat vloggers? Then you're in the right place. Well, welcome to the Sunday, August 18th edition of Expat News, where I cover the latest news, stories, and events affecting expats and the expat vlogger community in the Philippines. Well, hi, I'm Eric, and welcome to my Island Expats channel. Just as a reminder, these expat news videos come out every Sunday morning here in the US, so you know when to expect them. Well, I'm going to mix things up a bit this week as far as the format goes. And I'm actually going to start off with the video of the week. As something extraordinary happened recently with another vlogger. This vlogger, as many of you will know, most of you know, if not all of you will know, is the Filipina Pea. And she's telling her own personal story of growing up in the province in the Philippines. Her story is one of poverty, pain, and difficulty, which has created insecurities that affects her even today in her early 30s. You know, the P is one of the most popular vloggers in the entire expat-related space. Even though she's not an expat herself, you probably wonder, well, why is she in that space then? As most of us are expats or soon to be. But the truth is, she saw an opportunity to tell others what to expect in the Philippines. And she saw that 4 years ago by watching a couple of videos on YouTube and not agreeing with the advice that they were given for other expats looking to come over and see the country and consider living there. And she thought, I can do a better job than this. And so she's gone after her own channel, and she has her own style of kind of digging things out, looking for interesting, sometimes edgy topics, but telling the truth as she sees it, good or bad. You know, P has a way with words, and she just seems so confident on camera. So the story just kind of blows my mind because she's clearly gifted. P, you're smart and you're capable. But I know that's not how things started out for you. As when you first went to school as a kindergarten, you couldn't even spell your own name. In fact, both you and your mom were illiterate. Now, sometimes that happens when you're coming from the province. And this is why her video caught me by surprise. As up to this point, she's been so very private about her personal life. I have to tell you, we all call her the P. She doesn't really disclose her real name, and I'm certainly not going to tell you here. You see, most vloggers, we don't want to open ourselves up to our personal private stories, our dirty laundry, the mistakes we've made in our life, or whatever has happened, because it will open us up to undue criticism. And sometimes our viewers are tough on us in the comments. I don't think they realize how difficult it is to be in front of the camera, be honest, transparent, be authentic, and just tell the truth the way we see it. And all of us are very imperfect. Me included, by the way. I am anything but perfect. Anyway, in this video, P tells all in a very personal way, in great detail, surprising detail. She uses honesty, transparency, and she tells her story with tears. You would have no idea that this popular vlogger, who's just so seems to have it together and confident on camera, little smarty pants, does great delivery, works hard at it. You'd have no idea that she has such a difficult upbringing, and it impacts her self-esteem even to this day. In fact, she really has only found her self-confidence in about the last 4 years. And that's when she started vlogging. And she'll tell you herself, she feels like the vlogging community gave her a purpose and a way through this poverty and saved her. And she had to work through, and still continues to work through, many of her insecurities of people telling her that she's not enough. Honestly, it's an incredible story. I hope someday this is written down. I have so much respect for P and the vulnerability she displays in telling her own story.
I'm going to do something I rarely do and tell you some very intimate things about my life that I've never discussed publicly. Sometimes I read comments that say, P, I really appreciate all the subjects you cover, and I'm learning so much about the Philippines. But what about you? Well, as most of you know, I prefer to keep my private life private. But today I'm going to spill the beans and tell you about the events that shaped me and made me who I am. To do that, I'm going to start with one of the most powerful emotions in anyone's life and how it's driven me to this very moment in time. And that emotion is fear. When people ask me what my biggest fear is, I often say it's my fear of heights or my fear of cockroaches. But those are just little fears. I say those things because the real answer is a lot more uncomfortable, and it forces me to think about things I'd rather forget. But today, I'm going to let it all out. So here's the truth. My biggest fear is not being good enough. Not good enough as a daughter. Not good enough as a student. Not good enough to be a future wife. Not good enough for anything. To explain what I mean, I have to tell you about the first 20 years of my life, all the way to today. This is stuff no one's ever heard before. So if you ever wanted to know what makes P tick, here it is. After my father died when I was 3, my mother and I were desperately poor. If I told you what we had to eat sometimes or where we had to sleep, you wouldn't believe me. So I'll spare you the details. If you know anything about the Philippines, you know it's a caste system. And unless you have wealth or amazing luck or you know the right people, you're on the bottom of the totem pole like we were. People like us are brushed aside by society. And my mom was in a bad spot as a single mother with no income. So she did what she had to do. At the age of 4, I was left in the care of a relative while my mother looked for a job as a housekeeper in the city. There was already so much turmoil and insecurity in my life after losing my dad. And being raised by some distant relative didn't help anything. Neither did the fact that every time I did the slightest little thing or didn't do the slightest little thing, depending on her mood, she would shout at me in the most unflattering terms and proceed to hit me with a broom handle. No matter how hard I tried to please her, I was told I was lazy and worthless. I was afraid to tell my mother what was going on because I was literally fearing for my life. And I didn't think my mom could have rescued me even if she wanted to. But one day, my grandparents came for a visit and they saw the purple bruises on my body. They told my mother, who immediately quit her job in the city and came back to stay with me. So, so she supported us by doing nails of other women. My mother never learned how to read or write. So when I finally started school, I was totally unprepared for what I'd be asked to do. And it didn't come naturally to me at first. In one instance, my frustrated teacher told me to stand up in front of the whole class as she smacked the desk with her ruler and demanded to know what was wrong with me because I couldn't seem to write my own freaking name. I have that moment seared into my memory for all time as I was frozen with fear and didn't know how to answer. Did she want me to say I was stupid or was it a rhetorical question? I stood there, paralyzed, unable to speak until she told me to take my seat. Of all people, you'd think a teacher would realize how easy it is to traumatize a child by publicly shaming them. But, mine didn't know, or maybe she didn't care. Everyone in my life so far, and yes, even sometimes my own mother, had told me how worthless I was. And of course, I believed it. I just wasn't good enough for anything. So at this point, I'd had as bad a childhood as a kid can have. But then a funny thing happened. As my schooling continued, I found out I was pretty good at it. I not only became the first person in my family that could read and write, but it turned out I was faster than other kids when it came to math and science and history and all other subjects as well. I felt, I felt like I'd suddenly redeemed myself and I was more excited to go to school than I'd ever been about anything else in my life. But even back then, I knew that my time in the spotlight was only temporary. There's not a lot of opportunity here in the Philippines unless, you have the money to continue to law school or, med school. And I barely had enough to feed myself. The Filipinos who are fortunate enough to be born beautiful get chosen first. And they can sometimes even get out of poverty by using their looks. But I was never the pretty one. So I figured I'd just end up just like all the other women in our hometown, working at a store at the mall for minimum wage and hoping someone would choose to love me despite my low status. After I graduated from college with a useless diploma in my hand, that was exactly the kind of job I had, working at an appliance store for 60 cents an hour and having to support my parents just like everyone else. One day, a guy came into the store, but not just any guy. He was a foreigner. Now, where I live, we didn't see that many foreigners. So you can imagine my surprise when he actually showed interest in me and asked me out. There were much prettier women all around. And although I couldn't imagine what he saw in me, I was very flattered. So I accepted his invitation. He would turn out to be my first real boyfriend as an adult. I thought this guy must have made a terrible mistake. And it was only a matter of time, before he found someone better. But since my mom had told me how to be a good future wife, I decided to try my hardest to impress him. I was determined to be the perfect girlfriend. So even though we didn't live together, I cooked for him, cleaned for him, and I gave him my heart. He didn't have much money. And in fact, he'd just been scammed out of what little he had by investing in a fake business. But for me, that was okay because somehow in my head, we'd find a way to make our own money. We talked about our future together. And for the first time in my life, I looked forward to what was ahead. There was hope for me. And it felt like tomorrow had no limits. After almost a year together, I actually felt valued, like maybe I was good enough for someone. Until the day I found some used panties in his duffel bag that weren't mine. You might think I exploded in anger or stormed out of his apartment, but I was only 21 and dumb, in love, so I did something stupid. I tried to tell myself that I didn't see what I saw, and I thought that if only I could forget about it, somehow my paradise wouldn't come crashing down. So I kept my mouth shut. Shortly after that, he took a trip to Cebu for some minor surgery, and I decided to surprise him by going there to care for him while he is recovering. He was not happy about it. And it turned out he already had someone to fill that role. Someone who was probably missing a pair of panties. Although maybe she was a totally different girlfriend. So who knows? Now I'll spare you all the drama. And believe me, there was a lot of drama. But after my world imploded, I realized that once again, I just wasn't good enough. They were right all along. I was just a silly little girl that didn't have anything to bring to the table. And I obviously couldn't even keep a man. In fact, my uncle actually told me so. He said I'd never amount to anything, and I was an idiot for letting that guy get away. Somehow, it was my fault, and part of me believed it. I buried myself in my work to support my family as best as I could. And after years of call center work, I decided I could make more money as a massage therapist. So I started the necessary training. And just as I was about to get my certification, the world went crazy. COVID hit, and non essential businesses virtually shut down overnight. Needless to say, any occupation that requires you to rub your hands all over someone else's body was out of the question. So my massage career was dead before it even started. And by the way, guys, at this time, it was there was a lot of demand for massage therapists, and I was also planning to apply on a cruise ship because they were hiring massage therapists. So that was the backstory of that. Anyway, at this point, my life couldn't have sucked any worse. Not only was I isolated and unemployed, but who was gonna feed my family? I had no job, no love interest, my rent was due, and I was just about to turn the dreaded 30. So, shoot me now. But then, the most amazing thing happened. I was sitting at home in the place I shared with three other roommates, and I was watching YouTube to find a recipe for chicken parmesan. And I came across a video by a foreign expat who was talking about the Philippines. I watched it for a minute, or maybe two, and thought to myself, no, 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 that's not right. That's bad advice. And it dawned on me that I could do what they were doing, maybe even better, right from my own bedroom. I might have felt like I was a failure at everything else, but there was still one thing I had confidence in. Because of my school days, I knew I was good with words and I knew I could speak English well enough to communicate what was in my head. I'd already thought about starting a cooking channel years before, but not to make money at it, just as a hobby. And I didn't know much about monetization, but I figured I'd just give it a try. There weren't hardly any Filipino vloggers giving information to foreigners back then, so it was kind of new territory. But I got out my cell phone and laptop and introduced myself to the world of YouTube. Welcome to my brand new channel, the Filipina Pea. It's kind of hard to believe that that was me 4 years ago. It's kind of painful to watch because I was so nervous, but it marked a turning point in my life. Instead of failing, my channel took off. People started watching my videos and telling me how helpful they were. Instead of hearing how bad I was at everything, you guys were telling me that I was providing a valuable service. And after a while, it was even paying my bills. That started a whole new chapter in my life, a chapter that's still being written. But there's one more plot twist I didn't expect. One day I was answering comments and I came across one that said, P, I don't know why your video was recommended since I'm not interested in the Philippines, but I watched it anyway. I just wanted you to know that you have a very entertaining way with words. Keep up the good work. I thanked him, of course, and didn't think anything more about it. But after a few months, I saw his name in the comments section again, and we've been chatting ever since. We've actually seen each other a few times as well, and we're currently in a long distance relationship. And for some odd reason, people love to speculate about my private life. And someone even made a video claiming that the man I talked to is the guy who I met at the airport during my trip to the US. But guys, I hate to tell you, that guy in my video was just an eager fan, like I said at the time. I can't say what the future will bring, but maybe someday I'll have another new chapter in the story of my life. And that brings us all the way up to the present. Listening to my own story is actually doing me a favor. I've never shared this stuff with anyone before. So you guys are like my therapists. Well, that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing something a little different, something more personal.
I edited down a bit for time purposes, and out of respect for P, I really don't want to show multiple scenes where she's losing it a little bit. But if you want to see the complete video, you can just go to her channel and just search for her story, and you'll get the whole thing start to finish. And now for our Every Couple Has a Story segment. This week, we'll cover Old Dog Paul and Baby May. You know, Paul's been a go-to guy in the Dumaguete area, often referred to as the king of the Dumaguete vloggers, and the expat space for quite some time. And it's interesting to hear the details about Baby May and how she grew up in the mountains, which, though on the same island of Negros, she had a very different experience than what you would experience in the Dumaguete area, as she was about 8 hours away up in the mountains. I think you'll find this story quite interesting on how they met and a lot about baby May, how she was raised, the things she went through. There's some surprising elements here in this story, and I think it's worth watching. So take a listen.
About how we met, your background, where you came from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought it was high time we revisit that topic. So my first question, I'm going to interview May here.
Yes.
And I know the answers to some of this, and some of them I'll probably find out new information along the way. It's just how it works. Where did you come from? What's your province?
I'm living in Shaton. I'm born up in the mountain, province in the Shaton.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your province is Shaton.
Yeah.
Shaton is about an hour's drive from here.
Yeah.
By motorbike.
Yeah.
And then to get to where you were born.
Up in the mountain.
Up in the mountain.
Yeah.
How long is the motorbike ride to there?
6 hours.
I can't even imagine that. That you're that far up the mountain.
Yeah.
And you lived on what, like a farm? Squatter area? House?
Yeah. It's not squatters because the house is so far.
Okay.
The neighbor is not close.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you had a separate residence.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you went to school, now let me back up a little bit. You have 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Yeah.
And 1 brother and 1 sister is older than you.
Yeah.
And then the rest are younger.
Yeah.
And so your oldest brother is still living up in the mountains with your parents. He's kind of like, he's the guy that didn't quite make it down off the mountain, and he likes his red horse. So we'll just leave it at that. He works and he drinks, and then that's it. But we love him, and he's part of the family. May, who was born basically into nothing. Now, when you were growing up, May, how far away was your school?
2 hours.
2 hours walk.
Yeah.
Okay. And so was it a small schoolhouse, 1 room or?
Yeah, small.
Small.
Yeah, 1 room.
Just 1 room.
Yeah.
A 1-room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
And what grade did you go to school till?
Grade 3. I'm not shy for telling on that truth, guys. I'm the grade 3 elementary school.
She got over it after our discussion. I kid you not. I told her, I said, you know what? People will respect you more than if you said, yeah, I've been to college and I've, graduated Harvard. Anyway, that being said, so reading.
Little bit.
Little bit of reading.
Yeah.
Writing.
Little bit.
Little bit.
Yeah.
ABCs, and that was kind of it. And did they teach any English?
Little bit.
Little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about math?
Little bit.
Little bit. Are you good at math? No.
I need a calculator first.
Are you good at? You're a good reader, though. You read good. I mean, I see you read really well.
Yeah, I learned.
If it's in Tagalog or Visayan. English, you have a hard time with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then writing is a problem for you.
Yeah, because of my hand is shaking.
And your hand shakes.
Yeah.
I know. Whenever she gets nervous, her hand gets like palsy. She couldn't sign her passport in front of the lady. She got so nervous. When she finally got her passport, she couldn't sign. Her arm was shaking. So you were pulled out of school at 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And you were put to work. Because after me and I got together and we had known each other for a few months, and the trust level rose between her and I. I was sitting out back and she showed me her little passport savings book. And I said, "What's that?" And then she ran away, like, oh, teaser. It was just maybe and funny. And then lo and behold, 3 days later, the coffee table, there was the magical passport. She wanted me to see that, without saying anything. And I looked in it, and she had worked catering for years.
Yeah.
And living with her sister in a boarding house, again, 1 room with 2 girls, minimum, and sleeping on the floor. One old-fashioned toilet if they had one, sink, and cooking, all done in 1 room.
Yeah.
Wood burning, all that jazz. But I looked at the pass book. I said, "Could I see how much money you've got?" And she said, "Okay." And so I looked at it, and after making $6 a day, for years and years and years of catering. She had saved 30,000 pesos, which is 600 bucks. Now that to me just spoke volumes, because you were worried about what? Your future, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking of my future.
You're thinking, when I get older, I'm going to need some money. And I looked at the deposits and I was just awestruck that I would see a deposit for like 89 pesos, because that's what she had left over after expenses, or 110 pesos, 50 pesos, this peso, that peso, all these little increments. Every time she got some money, if she spent it on food. I imagine she went out and bought herself an outfit every now and then from Okai Okai. But what a grinder she was, especially when I first met her. She would bargain for everything.
Yeah.
Because every peso counted. She doesn't do it that much anymore. But you got into a fight with a lady over one peanut when she went out shopping for peanuts one time. That's another video. I'll never forget that either. So she was bound and determined to get one extra peanut. Anyway, I looked at that and I was just floored. And the story goes on is that we continued our life together. And a couple of months later, I was being a wise ass. And I said, hey, May, I don't have any money. Can I borrow your 30,000 pesos? And she didn't know I was kidding. And she said, well, I'd give it to you, but I don't have it. It's gone. And I said, what do you mean it's gone? And she said, yeah, I gave it to my sister. And I said, why did you give it to your sister? And she said, well, her husband died and she didn't have the money to bury him. And I said, I didn't know, number one, that this guy had died. I didn't know he was married. I mean, I didn't know anything about her family at that time. We were still, fairly new together, 6 months or something like that. And I said, why did you pay what did you give her 30,000 for? She said, the funeral. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me about that? And she said, it's not your problem. No, it's not your family. It's my family. I take care of it. That's it. And that speaks volumes, to May's character. I used to ask her, do you need any money for the trike? Because she'd come over to my apartment. We'd hang out, we'd swim, we'd get something to eat, and then she'd go home. She'd go back to her boarding house.
Yeah.
And I always asked her, I'd say, do you need any trike money? And she'd say, nope, I got money. She never once tried to exploit that or ask for it. She let me know that she was her own woman. And, anybody else that I would have asked that question to, they would have said, absolutely. And they probably would have said, by the way, do you have, 500 because of whatever happened in my life? Never once did May ever do that to this day. Since then, you've done what? After the catering deal and everything, what else happened in your life? What was the next thing that changed?
For the vlog.
Okay.
Yeah.
So doing YouTube.
And then the first you told me, but I'm shy. I'm behind the camera because I'm shy.
Right.
The first.
So after meeting the catering, do you want to tell people how we met? Because you were catering when I met you.
Yeah.
That was one thing we were going to talk
my
about.
close friend. My close friend is I classmate in the massage, and then she told with me.
She went to a massage school.
Yeah, before. So my close friend, she told with me, hey, I have the guy introduced with you, friend to my boyfriend. So she introduced with me, and then I see the Facebook. So I look the Facebook, the default. The profile is very strict. I'm shy.
I don't know where she comes up with this strict thing. I had a big smile on my face.
Yeah.
She said I look strict.
And then I told to my close friend, hey, the picture is look strict. He said, no, she is very nice man. You can try. And then you add me. And then after that, tomorrow you meet me in the bus terminal.
Uh-huh.
And then you bring me in the restaurant in San Cristobal.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we went and had lunch.
We had
and
lunch.
Then, I think that was it. And then we dated for 4 or 5 months, something like that.
Yeah.
You were still working.
Yeah.
And we would see each other.
Yeah.
And we were kind of off and on, we weren't committed to each other during that time. I was living my life. She was living her life. And we would see each other. And sometimes we'd go a month without seeing each other.
Yeah.
And so, but then we reconnect. And then eventually it kind of turned into more than one day turned into 2 and 2 days turned into 3. And there was always something about May where I saw inside of her character. And May does not suffer fools. I'll tell you that. And there's things that May does that I disagree with. There's things that I do that she disagrees with. And we've voiced it and we've let it be known. And we still stand our ground. But that's the dynamic between you and I.
Yeah.
And now we'll fast forward to the present. After being shy, and I had a YouTube channel. You actually didn't like me being on YouTube. You actually first said, I think you should quit YouTube. Because you didn't like the fact that I was so public.
Yeah.
You want to be private.
Yeah.
Everything had to be private. She still like that. She does not want to talk about certain things or make them, out in the open. She's very close. So let's talk about your channel. You started off cooking.
Yeah,
And
cooking.
Problem was you didn't know how to cook.
You sure the default. I cooked the pancake.
Yeah, she made me pancakes and she decorated it with mustard. She drew a happy face. She had no clue about what flavors to use or anything else. She squirted the whole thing with mustard because it was pretty. Oh my God. And I could go on and on and on. I used to sit back and watch her. And she'd have the microphone with a wire on it. And she'd move over here and the camera would fall over. It was awesome. And then she went into, you just kind of, like my channel, I guess, you just kind of morphed into something else. Because what she does on her channel is very similar to what I do. It's just sort of like what we're doing that day. So you were, for the longest time, you were doing things with girls in bikinis.
Yeah, bikini.
Because you were always wanting to be a fashion model.
Yeah.
And you're comfortable within your own skin.
Yeah.
And you found it to be fun to frolic around and look pretty and look sexy and wear your bikini. And then for about a year, you stopped doing it.
Yeah.
You just started, just not with a conscious decision. She just started interviewing different people and learning about their life stories. And what else? You go to different places.
Yeah.
You're learning to ride the scooter. You're doing all this stuff. You're traveling. You review apartments. You review hotels.
Yeah.
She takes people on tours here. And then just recently you said, I want to start doing bikinis again. Okay. And so that's that. Look for some more bikini videos, I guess, from Baby May.
Yeah, coming soon.
But you know what? I like this video because it's from humble beginnings. And now she's got her own bank account. She's getting ready to go become an international traveler. She's got to go to Thailand pretty soon.
Yeah,
she has, from a little girl that doesn't know how to do math, didn't learn how to read or write, is signing documents, reading forms, getting better with that.
Yeah.
We had to, and she's still the saver. I'll drive a point home right here, right now, about her savings has not changed one bit. To go to Thailand, we had to prove she had some money. She has a bank at BDO. I have a bank at Commerce Bank. And she's joint with me on the Commerce Bank in case of emergency. If I go to the hospital or something, she can access my funds. So we went down and we got a bank statement from BDO that shows 3 months worth of statements with a total amount. And then we went to my bank, Commerce Bank, same thing, 3 months, deposits, withdrawals, and bottom line, how much I have in the bank. I'm unhappy to tell you that she's got more money in the bank than I do. I looked at this cheapskate's freaking statement. I've never seen it. I've never asked her, like how much money I got. It just never occurred to me. And I look, deposit. Then where's the withdrawals? It's the deposit. And then, just like the one that I saw back in the day when she saved up the $600 of the 30,000 pesos. And I look at my bank statement, it's deposit, withdrawal. So, good on you, May. You're richer than I am.
Thank you so much, Tadepol.
And your dream one day is, I think, I'll put words in your mouth, buy a little plot of land.
Yeah, hopefully someday.
And build a house.
Yeah.
That's your dream.
That's my dream.
That's the dream.
Yeah, the little house.
Yep.
That's very important.
And that's a few years away. and hopefully she'll achieve that dream.
Yeah.
And knowing her, I think she will.
I quickly cover interesting clips from expat-related channels over the last week or so.
Yeah, challenger.
Now it's gonna be faster. Oh.
Still too hot in the lowlands, so I climbed more than 2,000 meters to Benguet, amazed by the steep vegetable gardens and this beautiful flower farm in Atok. The Cordilleras really grow everything, and I was even able to speak Bisaya up here. After a quick dinner stop at Barangay Ambassador's British Embassy, I headed deeper into the mountains, from the dramatically positioned Kibungan up impossibly steep mountain roads, carved into the rock, to see the life in a very special place called Takadang. It's rice terraces carved out of rock decades ago, from the simplicity of mountain life to something a bit more modern. Pinatubo erupted 30 years ago, and it's still a beautiful disaster. But that was just a side trip. I climbed back to Baguio and headed even further north, leaving the highest peaks behind and descending into the Abra Valley, majestic and powerful in a very different way. After a stopover in one of my favorite hotels in the country in Lawag, I fought strong winds on the northernmost highway of mainland Luzon. Dramatic? It certainly is. It sticks in the memory, like the bolo of Apayao, the Aliwa. And so I visited a calamansi farm and tested the V-Strom on a motocross track while waiting for the weather to clear. But we made it to Claveria and across the ocean to Calayan Island and its huge, cheap fish. And of course, these dramatic landscapes. Back on the mainland, Apayao's traditional food comes in many forms. We smoked a whole native pig and enjoyed vegetable-based delights in Kona. Apayao and Kalinga used to be one province, but now we get to experience their diversity. Mountain villages in the pines, built by American missionaries, providing all their needs, as well as some amazing cultural heritage. Descending through even more dramatic landscapes, the roads of Kalinga are really built amongst nature. To another very special village called Lubo, surrounded by rice terraces, there's a thriving tattoo culture here. Before leaving the mountains, I returned to a very special Ifugao town named Mayoyao, seeing an amazing project to restore disused homes and rice terraces reclaimed by the forest, before leaving the Cordilleras behind once more via a new road through Maliko. I wanted to return to Manila for an award ceremony that I won 2 years ago. I flew back to Davao for a few days, but returned again to be shocked by BGC. More Pancit later, I returned to some memorable towns and cities in southern Luzon, appreciated these massive heirloom mangoes, and then crossed from Bicol to Catanduanes, a province that produces a third of the world's abaca, and that provides so many dramatic landscapes. The long journey home was truncated by a return to the wooden boats, and an even crazier wooden boat. Welcome to Batag Island, home to a historic lighthouse, a mysterious boat-shaped house, and some mad trails. Yes, another new experience for the V-Strom. Returning to a different port, I found myself testing my balance, and one more wooden boat later, I took the long road snaking through the eastern Visayas, all the way to the other corner in Pintoyan. We're almost home.
Let's do it.
Thank you. Back into Mindanao with a tiny, tiny little blessing of rain, which I don't think is going to last long. I like rain like this. Got to go back to Davao, haven't I? It's a long way away, 410 kilometers, but we'll survive.
Well, that will do it for this edition of Expat News. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notifications button so you can be notified of future videos. Please let me know in the comment section your thoughts on this edition of Expat News. If you missed last week's Expat News, then check the link below. As you should see on our channel here, Island Expats, the last 6 weeks or so of Expat News, and we put one out every Sunday. And if you haven't checked out my Expat Challenge video, where I give you my top 10 priorities of what I'm personally looking for as far as moving to the Philippines, and 9 places that I'm considering before my upcoming trip as to where I would live in the Philippines, then check out the link below right here. You know, I'm only 2 weeks away from getting on the plane and starting this trip for several weeks to the Philippines. And the itinerary is completely based on viewers' comments. They've told me where I should go based upon my top 10 priorities and the things that I'm looking for a place to live in the Philippines. And shortly, I'll do an updated video to this Expat Challenge where I'll give you the final itinerary, as I've almost got it all worked out. The last couple of tweaks I'm trying to figure out how I can fit in. And then I'm going to do a separate video, probably see it in the next week or so. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this version of Expat News, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.